The town in '65 was unrecognizable from what Milton is now. It was a sleepy little town. It was basically just Main Street.
And he probably knew everybody in the town at the time.
Gord knew that population was going to increase.
Let's put it this way, he was meant to be the mayor. Nothing really fazed him.
He loves Milton through and through.
If you wanted to ruin your political career, run against Mayor Krantz, because he's knocked them all down for a long time. So
a lot of people figure that I was born and raised a Miltonian, but my birth certificate says born in the hamlet of Milton Heights. I was one of those kids that was born at home. I'm the oldest of 7 of a family. My dad worked in the brickyards for years, and I quite often will say it was my big mouth that got me into politics.
Gord had a very successful oil distribution business before he became the mayor.
I still owned Krantz Fuels at that time, which was a fairly prosperous business, and I was fairly well known in Milton.
He had some opinions about how he thought the town of Milton should be operating. It wasn't operating the way he thought it should.
I was in the barber shop at that time.
Talking about, this needs to be fixed and that needs to be fixed.
I was doing what most people still do today, complaining about what politicians do or don't do.
And somebody said, well, if you've got all the answers, why don't you run for office?
If you think you can do any better, why don't you run? And you know what? That individual was absolutely right. Put up or shut up. And I was not prepared to shut up. So the night of the nomination was being held in the Martin Street High School at that time. So I say to my wife right after dinner, I'm going to go up to the nomination meeting and find out what that's all about. And she says to me, are you interested in running? And I said, no, not really, because I told her what it was about. And I honestly wasn't. Anyway, I show up there, and of course, it's run by the clerk of the town at the time. And the question, as soon as I get there, why are you here? Are you interested in running? And I said, no, not really. I, just come see what this is all about. So anyway, fast forward comes nomination for councillors. And of course, somebody gets up and says, I nominate Joe. So Joe's name goes on the board. I'll move Mary. Mary's name goes on the board. And about halfway up, somebody jumps up and says, I nominate Gord Krantz. I didn't ask anybody to nominate me. I honestly didn't. So guess what? My name automatically goes on the board. So at the end of it all, the last one on the board, there was 11 individuals. So then the clerk says, okay, I'm going to read the names from the bottom up to make sure I got them correct. You either say stand or decline. Now I'm in the middle of the pack. I think I'm about 5th or 6th on the board out of 11. So she starts off at the top. Joe, do you stand? Yes. Mary, do you stand? And so down to me. And I've never been called chicken in my life. Gord, do you stand? I say yes. My name goes on the ballot. And of course, election comes along, and I'm brand new. I'm a rookie. I finish in the middle of the pack, so not too bad. 1 year goes around fairly quick. And I thought, well, I'm doing a pretty good job. I'm going to run again. I like doing it. And of course, I was about as controversial as you could be, and I knew that. I was stirring the pot for that 1 year. So anyway, I decided, I'm going to put my name forward again. Guess where I finished after that 1 year? I finished in last place. And it doesn't really matter where you finish, as long as you finish and you're doing your job, because I can assure everybody's not going to be in love with you. That's just part of the job. And if you're not criticized every once in a while, you're not doing your job. Because I've often said, I'm elected to attempt to satisfy the majority of the people the majority of the time. Not all the people all the time, because once you attempt that, you will fail. And I have no intentions of failing. And here I am, going into 61 years as an elected person here in the town of Milton.
To do it as long as he's done it and gone through as many challenges as he has with what is the fastest growing community in Canada, gives you a sense of his dedication to this community.
There was pushback. There are certainly challenges.
We were told by the province of Ontario, you're growing. And Gord realized at that point in time that we weren't ready. And he led the way in that regard.
I was wondering whether, he was a typical sort of country mayor not very sophisticated.
He is possibly one of the best political operatives that I've ever met in my life.
And I'm always surprised by his incredible memory.
He just does not show you that he's constantly calculating politics.
The biggest problem that Milton had in those years was there was no expansion to the town itself because we didn't have the capacity on the sewer and water.
And we really were restricted as to how much development we could have. Believe it or not, we were actually losing population at that time, and today here we are, one of the fastest growing municipalities in the country. So it took me a good 12, 15 years to pull together a scheme to raise roughly $100 million to bring water up from Lake Ontario.
I remember once that I was complaining about I think Martin Street was torn up, and I was complaining about how you couldn't get anywhere. Martin and Steeles was all a mess. And Gord just calmly said to me, he said, "Lisa, it's only going to be for a period of time, and then it's going to go back to normal and it's going to be better." And that was always Gord's attitude. A little bit of pain for a short period of time, but the long run, it was going to be good.
And that was no easy task, to bring the water up and the sewer down. So that was certainly one of the biggest challenges.
The magic about Gord Krantz is that he straddles the time of what Milton used to be, that really small, quaint, farm agriculture-based community that grew up to be a really awesome place for people to want to raise their families.
I think a lot of my elected colleagues, not only at the local level, but at the regional level, I'd dig in pretty hard.
When Gord makes a decision, you know where he stands and you know why.
And they knew I was not going away. I'm going to be persistent.
You know, he's still not afraid to tell anybody what he thinks about a certain situation. He can be pretty candid that way and frank.
People who don't see him day to day, they miss that. They miss that he's actually quite sharp. He understands things really well, and he has this remarkable ability to grow with the community.
Growth can turn into a monster if it's not properly managed. It starts with vision and leadership from the top. So the mayor really navigated this town through a period of unprecedented growth in the early 2000s.
Gord is a straight shooter.
So what you saw is what you got. There was nothing hidden about him. There were no two different personalities. And I love that about Gord.
One of Gord's favorite sayings is,
"Would you like me to tell you something to make you feel better?
or I can tell you the truth." And Gord will always tell the truth. And he's been that way since his first day in elected office in 1965.
I first met Gord back in 2008, I believe. There was a public input session on Milton Transit. And I went in there, said hi to him, and next time I met Gord was a year later, and he remembered my name. I'll never forget that.
When I became mayor in 2022, with my name being Lawler and his name being Krantz, we were right beside each other in the alphabet, and therefore we became seatmates.
Initially, I just saw him here and there, but then we served together in Milton Transit Advisory Committee, and I got to see exactly how involved he was in things. Because from a distance, you don't realize how technical people are or are not. Seeing his involvement in transit, his passion came out, and you saw that he truly believed in everything he said.
He always had a little bit of a comment that he could make on an agenda item that added a depth of insight that wasn't necessarily written in the staff report.
He is who he is, and he truly believes every single thing he says. So every word that comes out of his mouth, he truly believes that word.
He always comes in and is introduced and has a kind thing to say, and he also has a very realistic thing to say.
So as Milton has grown, Milton's need has grown, has shifted and changed, so has Gord. And that's the reason why he's been mayor for longer than most of us have been alive in Milton.
Because he's a real community-based guy. He goes to everything. He knows what's important. He reaches out to the community, and he's the same wherever you go, and people see that authenticity.
The mayor is really busy attending events all the time. Like if he can get there, if it fits in his calendar, he will make time to do it.
And I mean, I do his scheduling, and I often wonder, how do you do what you do on the weekends, especially? It's not uncommon for me to send him to like 6 different events in one day.
He was always there at the dinners. He was always introing. He was always participating.
He could be at the simplest event, the opening of a new grocery store, and he is going to bring the same kind of enthusiasm and fun as he would to something like opening the National Arts Center.
But he wants to be there to support.
And I've been very impressed by his ability to connect with people regardless of their background, regardless of the age group, regardless of the ethnicity or anything else. He's very, very good at that.
So as the town grew, He was able to keep up with it because he is who he is.
He really backed the Milton Velodrome, for example.
It was never meant to be in Milton. It was supposed to be in Hamilton. And in stepped Gord Krantz. And he said, we have money in the bank. We can put this together. It was never supposed to be permanent. It was actually supposed to be put up only for the summer and then taken down again.
He knew that that was going to put Milton on the map. He knew that that was going to help us attract university and college, and he can see that happening now.
We set out years ago, a good 15 years or more ago, to bring a college and a university here. I was told that it's only a pipe dream on your part that you're going to do that, and I said, well, just watch me.
He's not only ringing the New Year's bell, this man is chopping wood and putting his boots on if it's too wet to help somebody. So I not everybody understands that really grassroots involvement in the growth of this community.
But Laurier University's here now. Conestoga College is here now.
For a mayor of a major developing municipality, probably the fastest growing municipality in the last 20 years in Canada, he really hasn't changed one iota. And I really admire that.
Gord would continue to come out at the farm to get his Christmas tree at Christmas time. And of course, when he came out to the farm, he was always wearing
his Fina coveralls,
along with a pair of rubber boots usually.
It just shows you the kind of mayor that the town of Milton has.
I have met with many elected officials, but what struck me was as soon as I walked in there, he was so warm and so welcoming. It just felt like I had his entire attention. And that is very rare. I have not found that a lot in my career.
On my very first day of campaign, we needed to go out and door knock. And I'd never door knocked before, so it was pretty terrifying. And the first door we tried was Mayor Krantz. And that's the first time I met him, when I was looking for his vote. He made it so easy. He said, I'm your mayor. He lived right across the street from Town Hall, where he still lives. And he was gracious and kind, and I remembered that day, and I'll never forget that day. You know, when you're a true leader, you really don't show your emotions.
He really didn't show much emotion.
He doesn't really take pride in things that he does. He's proud of the town of Milton.
Of course, he's there for his family as well.
Where you see the softest Gord Krantz is with Olive.
But he just loved Olive. He would go home every lunch hour as much as he could and to be with Olive.
She was an incredibly steady force in his life. And she was definitely the partnership. There's no question about it. She was very different from Gord, but she totally held her own.
His biggest affinity, his biggest love was for his family.
It was always family first.
And his kids were just second to none.
So anyone that's known him, he's been even keel.
He's completely the same. You know, right down to his socks, right down to the clothes that he wears.
You know, I think he taught us the sacrifice to community.
He wanted the expansion of recreational facilities. He said, I want an arts center and I want the hockey rinks fixed. It was all about making places for the community that you could hold on to.
I don't think there's anybody more committed to this community. This is his passion. This is what he wants to do.
And there's a line he uses very often where he'll say, you know, such and such, there's two kinds of people in this world. There's those of us that are Miltonians and those that want to be.
He's optimistic about the future regardless of what we're all experiencing today.
My parents were Roger and Eleanor Hadfield, very proud Miltonians by choice. Unfortunately, they both passed away within the last year. But if anybody would have loved to have been there to celebrate all the successes that Mayor Krantz has had, it would have been my parents. Gord Krantz and the Hadfield family actually sort of arrived in Milton activities at the same time. And so my family has known Gord since the very beginning of our time in Milton.
I knew Chris personally well and his family.
The one thing that immediately struck me the first time and every time that I've ever worked with Gord is his commitment, his vision to what Milton should and could become. I was delighted by just how he, if anything, saw Milton slightly differently. When I returned from my first space flight and could present to Gord some memorabilia from that flight and show him pictures of Milton that I had taken from outer space and give him something to keep in his office.
It says to Mayor Krantz, I'm proud to take my Milton heritage around the world and off of it. So the message is to anybody and everybody out there, be proud of your heritage and take it around the world.
If you ask Gord, I'm sure he'll tell you it's a work in progress, and there's lots of problems with Milton that need to be solved. As an astronaut, it's great to be able to step back 400 kilometers and look down at how many problems have already been solved in Milton, and what a beautiful job he's done.
You know, I was a volunteer firefighter for 21 years.
You know, he's been part of the Royal Canadian Legion for most of his life.
I always contributed on a volunteer basis for many causes here in the town of Milton. So that's part of what you did as an elected person too.
My dad had a glorious yellow Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost, 1924, I think. So over 100-year-old car. And there were lots of times, many years, that my dad was sitting up front and Gord was sitting beside him as they drove through the Santa Claus parade. Those parades are a lovely moment to see a community coming together, but also to see Gord interacting directly with the people of the town.
What is really important to him is that this community is affordable for everyone.
One of the things I'm a little concerned about, and I talk about these last 4 years of council, 12% inflation and 36% our tax increase, not acceptable as far as I'm concerned. So that's got to be brought back into line.
If you don't know where you've been, you don't know where you're going.
So easy to look in the rearview mirror, but it's much, much more difficult to look down the road if you're driving, because there's always going to be a bend in the curve there. So, you know, you're going to have to detour once in a while.
Are we in a better place today than we were in 1980? We most certainly are. And it's a result of his leadership, quite frankly. That really relates to his perspective on the history of this community and ensuring that it's preserved for the future, because we're going through tremendous change here, and we're going through more of it in the next 25 years.
I am so happy that we are honoring Mayor Krantz today, because we are no longer the best kept secret in the area. His legacy by helping support these charities will be felt for generations to come.
Keep doing what you're doing in a good way, but when you hear people say you can't do this and you can't do that, I will say remove the letter T off of can't and you'll find you can.